Okay. Okay, so welcome everyone to Aljoya, Mercer Island. My name is Larry Almo.
My name is David Bates.
And we are the community relations team at Aljoya, Mercer Island. We are so honored and upbeat to have Ciscoe Morris with us today. He has been coming to Aljoya for many years. And I remember one time he came a couple years ago and he set up in our conference center, and my facility director got so upset because he put so much dirt around the whole area there because he was going wild with all these plants and flowers. So they cleaned it all up. But now this is Zoom, so you can do as much dirt as you want where you're at right now, Ciscoe. Looks like you're at your home. I just have to do 1 minute just to tell you just a little bit about Aljoya, Mercer Island. Number one, we'd love to bring great entertainment like Ciscoe. Number two is we're located on Mercer Island, halfway between Seattle and Bellevue, and we have 114 apartments of independent living and assisted living, beautiful courtyards, well-appointed apartments. It's just we're one of 8 communities in the Seattle area. We're local. The owners are local. They're very interested in our Seattle area. They come and visit us all the time, and we love to see them. And hopefully, Ciscoe, put it on your calendar. Hopefully, we're going to be in person next year. God willing, we hope to have you here next year. Okay? And just to, I'm sure you all know about Ciscoe. How many have either watched this show or know about it? Can we just see a show of hands? Okay, so you got a big fan base here, Ciscoe.
Oh, cool.
I'm glad we're not being charged for this Zoom presentation here, so because we'd be charged a lot for that. But you're a gardening expert, a TV and radio personality, author of 2 great books that we have. You're going to talk about how you're going to give away a few of those. And also you had worked with a local university here for many years, Seattle University. And so that goes back a little ways, but you're well known for having fun and doing what you do. And my first question for you is gardening, does that help take stress away? How does that work?
Oh la la. Well, I'll tell you what, I've had no stress through this whole pandemic. Part of it's because I walk 12 miles a day.
Wow.
But the other part is that I'm out gardening all the time. Not only working with nature just kind of takes your stress away, and working with plants and having so much fun watching them grow. The other thing is, every neighbor that walks down the street asks me a question. Next thing I know, we're in a big conversation out there. So it's not only really just good to be out in nature, it's a really social thing too.
Excellent. Well,
Cool.
Ciscoe, take it away. Your fans, including us, David and I, are here watching, and it's all yours. Go ahead.
All right, thanks so much. Now, I don't know how many of you, I know I've told this story over at Mercer Island at Aljoya before, but I don't know how many of you have heard me tell why I say oh la la all the time. So if you don't mind, I might tell that story because that'll warm me up. So people do, they walk up and they go, where did oh la la come from, you know? So Mary and I are quite the travelers. We lead garden tours around the world. I'll be heading to Scotland in August, I'm hoping, if things are okay. And then South Africa this fall. And I think that'll be my 21st or 22nd international garden tour that I've led around the world. So I enjoy doing that. Most of the time after the tour, Mary and I do something for exercise. So, you know, we've hiked the whole French Alps, just the 2 of us, 380 miles. And I think it took 29 days, although Mary says it was 28. We'll never know for sure. So it's really fun to do that. And we've done bicycle rides and things. So where oh la la came from was a bicycle ride in France. So we were riding our bikes down from Provence all the way up into Britannia. You know, it was about a 1,000-mile bike ride, and we had our bikes in our tents, and it was really fun because we meet French people and talk French, and it was just a great trip. You could tell I love France. And so we're riding along somewhere down in Provence, and we saw something that we had never seen before. But if you've been in France in the last 10 years, you have seen these things. They're big outdoor bathrooms. They look like plastic igloos, you know? So we recognized what it was. So we pulled over on our bikes, and I watched our bikes on the bench, and Mary had to put in 2 francs to go in. So she puts in 2 francs. Pretty soon she comes out, she's holding the door, and she goes, "You're not gonna believe it in there." She goes, "It's spotlessly clean and it plays great music." I'm like, "Oh boy," you know. So I start fishing around for 2 francs. She goes, "Why waste 2 francs? I got the door open. Just come on in and use it." You know, I go, "Yeah, why waste 2 francs?" So I go in and shut the door. There's one little thing we didn't know about these French toilets. They're self-cleaning. That means when the door shuts, the person has left, it's time to clean. So I walk up to the front, whoosh, I get blasted right in the chest by these jets. I run to the back, whoosh from behind. I go to the door, it's locked, whoosh from the side. The whole time Mary's sitting on this bench watching the whole bathroom going, hearing, ah! Finally the door, the jet stop, the door opens, I come staggering out, drenched from head to foot. And here's this little old French guy holding a baguette, wearing a baguette, a beret, looks at me and goes, "Oh, la la." So that's where "oh la la" came from. Now you know. And that story is featured in my new book called "Oh La La." It's short stories about gardening. And I'm going to give away 40s after the first part of the talk ends. And when we're about to start the Q&A section, I'm going to give 40s, but you're going to have to answer my tough Ciscoe Garden Stumper questions. These throw people into tizzies of nervous anxiety, even though I've never stumped anyone yet. But today could be the first day. All right. Okay, I thought I'd start. Let's see, I'm going to have to move that. I thought I'd start with this vegetable pot right here, because I know that some of you folks that are watching this talk don't have a big fat garden that you could plant, but you like that. You probably love growing your own groceries, you know. And one thing I like, I buy all organic vegetables and everything. We go to PCC. But the thing is, it's a lot of fun to grow your own veggies, and then you know they're safe as can be. So all I did, I got this little pot here. I can't quite lift that. It's too heavy to lift, but it's wide and low. And that's perfect if you're doing things like lettuce, mustards, spinach. And right now is the perfect time to grow these plants. Now, I went out and bought these starts at my local nursery. In fact, I did this pot on Evening Magazine about 3 weeks ago. So you can see how fast it's filling in there. Teensy starts. You can see, you could do this all by seed. The only problem is you'd need a soil thermometer to put in the soil. You don't want to start seeds outside until the soil temperature stays above 45. If that happens, you can do all your greens, you can do your peas. And so that I got snap peas in there. Snap peas are so good. It's unbelievable. The only problem with snap peas, they're too good, because I go out to bring a bunch in for dinner and I eat them all before I get to the back door. Oh, la, la. So those are in there. They're going to grow 3 feet tall. So I got this really cool little trellis that I put in there, and they'll climb that. And then these are all mustards, arugula. You can have some lettuce in there. It's incredible. So, all right. And make sure that you have a pot that's got a hole in the bottom. Uh-oh. I hope that's I'm a little nervous. It's a chainsaw, but we'll hope for the best here. So, hey, Mary.
Yeah,
Thanks.
I'll
Yeah.
go.
No, come out. I want to get this out of the way.
Oh, okay.
All right, stick it down here. Thanks. Okay, so I thought it'd be fun to do a pot up today. So talking about that vegetable pot, that was a wide, narrow pot. But if I was gonna grow Brussels sprouts, tomatoes, anything like that, where it's way too early to plant those now, as you probably know, then you want a pot, a big pot like this. Make sure it's got a really good drain hole in the bottom. You can put, a little piece of hardware cloth down there, something, just something that'll let a little bit of the water get through without letting the soil all out. I don't even bother with that. I fill this totally with the best potting soil I can buy. Don't do what you used to do with your grandma. Don't go out and get pebbles and put them down in the bottom around the drain hole. I don't know where that idea came from, that that's a good thing to do, but it's not. It actually impedes drainage. So just fill it up with soil. Some of the soil is going to come out the first time you water. You'll have to add some more soil. You probably will have to do that for, the first 4 times you water. You should never have to do it again. So now this pot right here, I bought at my local nursery at City People's, and I think I paid $25 for this. So what a deal. And it's a cool looking pot, light as a feather. So really nice. So, okay, I fill this with my potting soil. Now, by the way, this is the fertilizer that I use in my vegetable pot. So you want to work some fertilizer in. Usually they give you instructions how much for the size of the pot. Never makes any sense to me at all. I generally put in a cup. So, but for this particular pot, I'm going to use vegetable food, which has different numbers. That one, the first one was 555. This one is 463. So the middle number, that determines what you want to grow. So if you're growing tomatoes or something, you want that middle number higher than the first number, because that's phosphorus, and it tells plants, hey, bloom your little head off. But I use 555 with the lettuce and the peas, because I don't want them to bolt and go to seed. I want them to grow lots of good top stuff. If the first number is as high as the second, then you get a lot stronger growth of the greens. Okay, so I'm gonna work this in, a cup of this in this pot. Now, I always start with a really cool centerpiece. So, voila. Now, I love these. This is I think it's called Wilma. And so this is a perfect centerpiece. So what do you got to think about when you get a centerpiece? Got to think, is this going to be a sun or shade pot? Of course. For a lot of my shade pots, I go to the house plant section of like Malbach's nursery, and I buy a really cool house plant, because most of them like shade. But for out in the sun, you want something really cool. So Wilma here is actually a Monterey cypress. And this was Megan Black, my old TV partner. This was her favorite plant on earth. And you know why she loved it so much? Because she said that it smelled like lemon pledge. I guess it kind of does. All right, so now, real key thing with this centerpiece, it's got to be in proportion with the size of the pot. So if I have something that goes up 6 feet, might even blow over in the wind, it's going to look kind of awkward. So I always start with something as close to proportion of the pot as I can. And I can leave this in maybe 2 years in this pot. So next year I'll just, take out all the old plants, add a little compost, mix it in and plant. But after that, I'm gonna plant this out in my garden somewhere to keep a really beautiful shape like this. Okay, now, so this is your centerpiece. That's kind of the thriller of the whole pot. I like, one of the key things that I like when I plant a planter like this is I want contrast of texture and form. So this leaf has this wonderful weeping form, and it also has this nice texture that's so different than the centerpiece. So far we're doing pretty good. I almost never do a pot without a heuchera in it. So heuchera, we call them coral bells. That's because they get these really cute little flowers that grow up there. And it's one of my all-time favorite plants. Can take sun or shade, although usually it'll tell you on the tape, this is the kind of plant, if you plant this and it doesn't do well in your garden, then you put it too much sun or too much shade probably. So try it in another spot. It's worth the test. So, and by the way, I want hummingbirds to come wherever I plant this. The little coral bells on this, it's interesting. So people would come see me and they go, do these heucheras, do they attract hummingbirds? And at first I had to go, I don't know. See, when I was a kid, we grew a heuchera with green leaves and red flowers. And it was called Heuchera sanguineum because sanguineum means blood red. And the hummingbirds used to go to them all the time when I was a kid growing up in Wisconsin. So, but I never knew if they'd go, because this might have white flowers, it might have anything, they could be really little. So I made a bouquet one time and I had a lot of coarse things in it. I wanted some fine flowers. So I cut off a whole bunch of these little bunches of flowers and put them in the bouquet. There were 6 of us eating around a 44-inch table. My bouquet was in the middle. The hummingbirds were going in, hitting the flowers at a heuchera while we were eating dinner. So they like the flowers on these a lot. So, okay, we'll stick this guy. I'm hoping I could do this. I didn't want to use soil in this today for a number of reasons. Okay, that's pretty good. Now, I'm going to save one plant for the end because my wife Mary and I argued over if it was a good plant. Well, I'll do it now. So I got this incredible, I think this is called, Fire Island Hosta. Is this the coolest hosta you've ever seen in your life? Look at the color in that. So the minute I saw it, I thought this is perfect for this combo. Mary saw it. She goes, I don't think that goes with the plant you got. So you guys will have to vote at the end to see if I picked a good plant. So if I cram this in here, and I think I can, there we go. Just a little farther. There we go. All right. So now we're getting it pretty much. I've got my middle pieces in. Now I want some color in here. And I want to attract more hummingbirds. So you might be surprised to know that these pelargoniums, we call them geraniums, these are extremely attractive to hummingbirds. There's something else about this plant that might really surprise you. So if some of you probably watched me on Gardening with Ciscoe live on Northwest Cable News, it was owned by King 5. I did a show on there for, 15 years, something like that. And people would call in with their questions from all over the country practically. And this woman called from Idaho. She said, I have a real problem. She said, I live on a farm. She said, there are so many flies around that we can't even open the door and flies come in. We can't open any windows if there's not a screen on them. And she said, is there a plant that will repel flies. I'm like, no, I don't know any plant that's going to really do that for you, you know. So she was really disappointed and hung up. Next person that called was from Austria. She had an Austrian accent. And she goes, do you think that we plant all those Martha Washington geraniums in our little window boxes all over Austria just because they're pretty? I said, you don't? She goes, no, they repel flies. So I was like, wow. So where I'm doing this Zoom right now is between my garage and my house, and our garden is behind. And I give a lot of private tours of our home garden, and we do that to help good causes. So they're auctioned off, and the cause gets money, and I get the fun of showing people around my garden. And if you ever are the winning bidder for one of these tours, just be aware that you will start with a glass of wine in your hand, because that way you'll like my stories better. That's very important. So, okay. So this spot between our house, when we moved in, because we bought the house in the winter, then in summer, all of a sudden, all these flies came up. There were like 60 flies between our house and our garage. And every time I brought tours back through this little channel way, everybody's like, why are all these flies here? It was so embarrassing, you know? So after this woman said that these geraniums repel flies, I told Mary, let's do some containers with some geraniums in them between the house and the garage and see what happens. Guess what? No flies. First year we did it, not one fly. For 6 years, we planted with geraniums in the pots and everything. Didn't see a fly. So at some point I said, let's try it without geraniums and see what happens this year. The flies were back. So there's a magic quality about these. So if you've got a fly problem, these will come in handy. Okay, so these little geraniums can take sun or shade, although they do best in a little bit of sun. I think they smell really good, but I guess flies don't. So, and these will grow up to a middle size that'll be just right for this pot. So stick those in there. And, you know, I may not be, I always buy more plants than I really think I could cram in there, because it kind of really helps. So now, what do you think of this hosta with these? I think it's great, but we'll see. All right, now, I want a little more color in there. So aren't these the coolest little pansies? Let me show you a close-up of that. So that pansy, you can see that the top, they're called frizzle pansies. So they're real frizzy. So I'm not sure I can cram that all the way down in there. I'll put it over here so I can at least show you what I'm trying to do here. All right. Yeah. All right. When I turn this around, you'll get a good look. So there you can see how that's going to look with those in there. I think I can cram one over here. That's pretty good. Oh, yeah. So at least it gives you an idea now. And I think this looks pretty good. This blue and this yellow. So one last thing. I could cram them in if I had soil in here. So I need something to weep over the side of the pot, because that adds a whole nother dimension to how attractive the pot is. So these are creeping Jenny. They have yellow flowers and the foliage turns real yellow. So think how pretty that'll be with this blue pot with this yellow foliage with yellow flowers. Now I got a big warning for you here. And that is, Wandering Jenny is really fun. There's a Creeping Jenny. It's Creeping Jenny, it's called. So this really cool plant will creep down over the side of the pot, but it can become a horrible weed in your garden. I never plant this in my garden because it moves fast. It's hard to get rid of. And there's Wandering Charlie. any plant with a name like that, watch out, you know. So I'm gonna plant these in here because it'll be beautiful. Maybe I can cram one in right here. Yeah, so you get kind of an idea what that's gonna look like. Creep it down over the side. And so I'll be putting about 3 or 4 of these in here. If you plant this in a spot where you've got on your deck or it's, you know, cement, nothing to worry about. If you plant this by the side of a garden and this creeps down and hits soil, it's going to take off like Pickett's last charge. You're going to be trying to weed this stuff out for a long time. So be a little careful when you use some of these little creepers that you don't, you could just go out and prune them so they never touch the soil, whatever you want to do, but don't let them take off. Okay, so this is a pretty nice pot, I think. And so when you, at the end, when you ask a question, you got to tell me if you like that Fire Island Hosta in there or not. I should have bet Mary a bottle of wine on this one, I could tell. All right. I have some other stuff I want to show you here. I'm going to get this down. So first, I want to show you the coolest new tool I got that I think you all want. So this tool right here, and I don't work for this company, so you know, whatever, I'm not trying to give them a free advertisement, but when I love something, I like to show it off. So this is called a cut and hole. Why do I like it so much? Because let's say you're pruning your roses or something, and I use this to prune roses all the time. And now the only problem with this is I'm not always sure I'm doing it the right way. That was the wrong way. So I think I got to flip it like this. All right, let's see if this works. So if you get it twisted the right way, you reach in, you're deadheading your rose, just cut. Whoop. Okay, let's try that one more time. All right, there we go. So it holds it. Now you could just go drop it in whatever you're going to do. Cut the next one. This is such a great tool. And if you're deadheading plants in your garden, so you know you got to deadhead a lot of plants that are growing in your garden. So when the flowers are spent, you just reach down, cut it off, throw it in the thing. You don't have to walk on the soil, go into the middle of your garden. And this, one of the really key things about using this to prune roses, you'd never want to get pricked by a mildewed rose pricker, because you can get a disease from that that's really serious. So either you got to wear big long gloves, you know, something to make sure you're really safe, or you use something like this and there's no problem. I want to show you another tool that I love. And I'm sure you've seen these before, but people always ask me, what are my favorite hand pruners? Now, I never even go out in the garden without my hand pruners, and buy a holster. If you don't, you're going to stick these in your back pocket. You forget they're in there. Oops, you just ripped the upholstery out of a really beautiful chair or a sofa. You're going to be in big trouble. So always buy a little holster. And these are Felco number 8 pruners. So there's a lot of different pruners you could buy. And I've actually been involved in tests where like a French company sent me a bunch of pruners thinking that I would like theirs better than Felco. And I hated to tell them, but these are made in Switzerland. They've got really great steel. It's got one problem, this thing. I don't know if you can see this Dumaflatch that locks it, you know. So whenever you're not using it, you're supposed to use that to lock it. Don't use it. It's a really lousy part. I don't know why such a good pruner has a part that bad, but if you use that, it wears out. And when it does, every time you make a cut, it locks. It drives you crazy. And then you tighten it up, and then you can never get it out again, and it still locks. and then you end up drilling it out. So don't even bother ever using that. Just have a holster when you put it in and it holds it. One last thing I wanted to show you. Buy yourself a hand file. So they sell this hand file at the nursery, right where you buy the Felco pruners. By the way, this is Felco number 8, and I got a pretty small hand. It works real good, and it's kind of real comfortable. But if you're a lefty, you want number 9s. It's kind of funny. At Seattle University, where I used to direct the grounds care, I give everybody a good pair of Felco pruners, but they had to give them back if they quit to go get another job somewhere because these are expensive, you know. And so I hired this woman, and I give her the last person's hand pruners. And she goes, "I'm left-handed." I go, "What difference does that make? Hand pruner's a hand pruner." She goes, "Okay, I'm bringing in my lefties from home. You go out and prune with them and let me know how they work." I went out with her left-handed pruners for 15 minutes. I came back in and said, "I'm buying you a pair of lefties." Number 9 is for lefties. So here's one last thing. I actually taught at horticulture college for a long time. And one time, the teacher above me, who'd been there longer than me, didn't fill up his class, so the class didn't go. So he got to take my class on bugs, and I had to teach equipment maintenance. If there's any job that I should never have done in my life, it's equipment maintenance. Oh la la. Oh man. Most people would probably take these apart and everything to clean them. I never do that because I took them apart in front of the class and I couldn't figure out how to put them back together. So all you got to do is get yourself a good file. It's got one more coarse side, one more fine side. Start with a coarse, and you only sharpen the part with the bevel. And you just kind of go right down the line like that. Make sure you get that part right at the front the most. And you just keep going like that. And oh my God, that is so sharp, you can't believe it. So just do the bevel, nothing else. And I do it maybe once every 3 weeks, something like that, because these are Swiss steel. They hold a really sharp point. Okay, I want to show a few other things with spring coming on. Like what do you need to prune, for instance? So remember that heuchera I showed you a few minutes ago? I'll grab that. So remember that heuchera, and one of my all-time favorite plants. But guess what? After they've been in the garden for a number of years, they start looking like this. So they look like a little palm tree with leaves only on the top with these big long stems. It looks terrible. And when I first bought some of my first heucheras and they started doing this, I thought, what do I do with those? Should I just throw them away? But I thought, I wonder what would happen if I cut them back. And so what I learned was that in March, you cut them off right about 1/8 of the inch above the ground, okay? And then you want to take off all these old dead leaves here. Just get rid of them. Well, I'm going to have quite a mess to clean up here. Doggone, I can't wait till I come back to Aljoya, so I don't have, you guys have to clean it up. Okay, so you take those off and you put this in the ground. So the other one, you fertilize, keep moist. It's going to grow back in no time at all. And then this part, you cut off and you find a shady spot, make a hole in the ground, stick it up right to this top. So all this is underground. That will root. You got yourself a brand new heuchera. It's really great. First time I showed this on TV. So Amiga Black, we'd go to each other's house to show how to do different things on TV. And so she came to my house and we never even would talk about what we were going to do. they turned the camera on, we start doing it. So they turned the camera on, she goes, so what are you gonna do to it? Because she saw how it looked. I said, we're gonna cut it right down to the ground. It'll grow back. She's like, are you sure you know what you're doing? Right on TV. I'm like, me again. Not only that, when she came back 3 weeks later to do some more TV work at my house, she went and looked at that heuchera that I had cut back, and it looked like this in 3 weeks. It was already filling in and beautiful. She said, you bought a new one. Oh, la la. No, they come back like game busters. It works really well. So, well, great. Thanks. I'm going to put a hat on because it's starting to rain.
Oh, easy.
I don't mind that though. Okay, so here's another question I get a lot, and that is, how do you prune rhododendrons? How far can you prune your rhododendron, and when should you do it? And do you have to get rid of these old flower things that are on there? I hope you could see that. So the spent flowers, a lot of people ask me, do you have to deadhead the spent flowers? So, you snap them off, and you gotta wait until they snap off easy. But if you wait too long, it can be hard to take them off. But here's the answer to that question. If you don't take off the spent flowers, you're gonna get the exact same amount of flowers you had the year before. So you're not gonna get less flowers if you don't do it. However, if you do snap off these old flowers, then you're going to get a lot more flowers the next year, because what that does is that kind of triggers a lot more growth to come out of the top. And of course, where you get growth is where you get flowers. So yeah, it'd be better to snap them off. Now, if this is a 15 feet high rhododendron that I'm working on, and it's done flowering, I'm not going to climb up there and take every spent flower off. It's not worth it. It looks better if you do it, but you don't have to. So when do you prune a rhododendron? You prune a rhododendron right as soon as the flowers fade. So when the flowers fade, that's when you want to prune. Why is that? Because after the flowers fade, then not too long after that, they send out new branches. And on those branches, that's where the buds are going to form for next year. So if you wait too long to do your pruning, of course, if you prune before it flowers, just cut off flowers. But if you wait too long after the blooms fade to do the pruning, then what happens is you interfere with this process of the buds forming. You get way less or no flowers. So do it quick. Now, how far can you prune a rhododendron? It's kind of interesting because at Seattle University, we had 100-year-old rhododendrons on campus. And sometimes we would move those rhododendrons and they would start putting out little leaves because we beat the living tweedle out of the roots because they were so big. And so we had no choice. We cut them way down. Anywhere there ever was a leaf on your rhododendron, there is a little what we call adventitious bud that'll grow a new branch. So even though you don't see any leaves down here, this was at one time covered with leaves. Anywhere I cut it, any height at all, right there, it's going to send out new branches. So literally, you can take a 20-foot rhododendron, and we did this at Seattle U, and cut it to 4 inches above the ground. And it'll come back, and it'll come back fast. You won't see flowers for 5 years. But in 5 years, you'll start getting flowers. It'll be all full of beautiful. Which brings up another question then. Because I bet this has happened to a lot of you folks watching this. So you go to the nursery and you see this beautiful rhododendron with a really spectacular flower. It's about this big. You think, wow, I'd love to put that right in front of the picture window, because then we can look out and see the flowers and bloom and everything. Well, a lot of rhododendrons are really big. I've seen 50-foot rhododendrons in English gardens on my travels around the world. So this is probably going to get a lot bigger than you think it is. And so what happens? Pretty soon it starts blocking your view out of the window. So you think, well, what should I do? And if you know you can cut it down, so you can cut it down below. And you don't get any flowers for a couple of years, and then it grows up and blocks the view from the window again. And you cut it back down, you end up never seeing flowers on these things. So there's a better way to go. Okay, so now at Seattle University, I was the director for grounds care, and but I never, that's a Jesuit college. And I never worked in the Jesuits' garden unless they called me up and asked me, would you send a gardener? Would you come do some work in our garden? They had a beautiful garden. It was their garden and the priest took care of it. So they give me a call one day, and it's Father B, who was a really neat guy that I liked a lot. He said, we're having a huge battle over here, and we need you to come over and give us an opinion. And I always hated that, because it was like 50 gardeners over there, all with an opinion, and I had to give mine. It's like, ah. So I go over, and the problem is there was a beautiful rhododendron. And they had a chow hall, and it had windows that looked out in the garden, and this beautiful rhododendron was blocking the view right out of the window. It was right in front of the window, totally blocking the view. And Father B goes, here's the problem. Father Hayes goes out every 5 years and cuts this thing down to about 1.5 feet, and then it grows back up. We don't get to see these spectacular flowers. It grows back up, blocks the view, and then it starts blooming again. So Father Hayes goes out and cuts it back down again, you know. So I said, there's a way better way. Instead of cutting it down, what you do is you just trim off any lower leaves that are blocking the view out the window. Now, so this one, I said, now I'm going to open it up and let you see through a little, but in a couple of years, the canopy will be up above the windows, and I'm going to keep these really beautiful trunks to frame a view out the window, so the canopy will be blooming up above. You'll look through this beautiful framework of branches to see the garden. All the priests were like, yeah, this is the solution we've been looking for. Father Hayes goes, I've been pruning this down for the last 35 years, every 5 years. This next week, I'm going out and I'm cutting this thing down. And nobody could tell Father Hayes what to do. He was kind of like the head honcho for the garden. So everybody was all bummed out. And I went back to my office and said, oh, what the heck with it? Well, next Monday, I come to work. My phone rings. It's Father B. He goes, they just sent Father Hayes on a 5-year sabbatical to Italy. He's got to leave in a couple of days. There's no way he's got time to prune this rhododendron. So as soon as he leaves, I want you to come over and do that kind of pruning you told us about. So I said, okay, you know. So Father Hayes took off for Italy, and I came over and I cut off a lot of the lower branches. In the first year, he just kind of sawed through some leaves. By the second year, the canopy was almost above the window. I had framework this beautiful. Some rhododendrons have bark that's red and exfoliating, because Madrona, for instance, is the queen of the rhododendron family. So a lot of rhododendrons have really beautiful foliage or bark. So I had pruned this up. By the third year, you could look through this framework of branches. It was just gorgeous as could be. And you could see the flowers through the window up above. It was magnificent, So I planted trillium underneath and all kinds of cool plants under there. Well, 5 years went by. Unbeknown to me, Father Hayes got sent back from Italy. First job he did when he got back, he cut that rhododendron back down to about 1.5 feet from the ground. Oh la la. Now I don't know if priests can go to hell, but if they can, that's where he is. Okay. All right. I think there's time for just a couple other little things. Let's see, what time is it? Okay, yeah. So now we all know our nice little daffodils, and the tulips are starting to come up, and the snowdrops have already been blooming away for a long time. Is there anything you need to do to these? This is a great time to give them some organic bulb food. I didn't bring mine out here, but so if you go to a nursery and say, I want organic bulb food, they'll give it to you. And it'll be high in phosphorus, that second number, and scratch that in around these plants. Really, as soon as you see them start coming out of the ground is a good time to do it. And maybe one more time when the flowers just start to fade, because what you want to do is feed those bulbs. Because if you don't feed those bulbs, sooner or later they may just poop out on you. So you want to give them some nutrition. Never cut the foliage down until it all dies back to the ground. Then you can cut it off. That means it's sitting there just sending all this energy and strength down to the bulb to make nice big bulbs. So it's the way to go. Now, if you've been having troubles with squirrels eating your tulips, that's a really big problem. Squirrels love to eat tulips. So when I plant tulips, I'll put something down over them like chicken wire or something so that those little squirrels can't dig in the ground. And then in spring, when I see the very first signs that tulips are coming up, I pull that off so that it can grow. But squirrels are such rascals. I actually have seen, I have an office that looks out into my back garden. I had some beautiful orange tulips growing back there. And I had outwitted the squirrels by putting the chicken wire on there, but that was off now. The squirrels started biting off the blossoms. Before they even opened, they were buds. They just bit the buds off. I think they did it for spite. I'm not sure, but that's what I think. So what I did was I got some ghost pepper sauce. That's some of the hottest pepper sauce you can get. If you do what I'm recommending, you want to wear goggles or something. You don't want to get this in your eye. I pour that in a little spritzer bottle with just enough water so that I can mix it up really good so that I can spray it. I wait until morning when the squirrels are going to be out soon causing trouble, sprayed it on those blossoms, on the buds. And you have never seen a squirrel yell "Ahua!" like that. They hate hot pepper. There's only one mammal on earth that likes hot pepper. It's us. All other mammals, dogs, cats, squirrels, cows, they all hate hot pepper. So you could put some hot pepper sauce on there. And I'll tell you what, the squirrels stopped eating them. Only one squirrel kept eating the buds. And that's that kind that wears a sombrero. So those kind that doesn't do any good at all to try and control wolf. Okay, I think I have one last thing. If I can find it. I'm not seeing it. So, oh, here it is. Oh, okay. There's a really important one I want to tell you about here. Two. This is clematis. And this is the kind of clematis, it's a vine that blooms with not too big flowers as it grows all summer long. So you can see it's starting to put out some new growth now. You want to cut these down. If it's the kind of clematis that blooms as it grows all summer long, cut it down to 2 buds from the ground right now. If you don't do that, what's gonna happen is you're gonna get all the flowers way up at the top and none near the bottom at all. So that's a good thing to do. If your clematis blooms in spring, you have to wait till it's done blooming, and then you could just neaten it up and cut it back. Those are much harder to prune. I prefer the kind that bloom as they grow. Okay, so this is lilac, and I get so many email questions and all kinds of things like that from people who go, okay, I planted this beautiful lilac. Now all the flowers are up at 15 feet tall. I can't even smell them. And how do you control lilac so it doesn't grow too tall? Lilacs live well over 100 years, but individual branches often don't. So when I used to go into someone's garden to prune a lilac, first thing I do, I'd go to the base of the lilac and put my hands to squeeze the trunk. And if my fingers went right through, it means that big branch is rotting. You cut that down below where it's rotting and it'll grow right back. So lilac, you could cut the whole thing right to the ground. It'll come back, I guarantee it. But you don't want to have to do that. You won't get flowers for at least 5 years. So what you could do, if you want to keep your lilac from getting too tall, if it's really tall now, you could cut a third of it down, next year a third way down, and the third year a third way down. And then by the time you're done doing that, some of the ones will be getting ready to bloom again. So, but here's what you do if you bring home a new lilac. After it blooms, you do not want to leave these old seed pods on there. If you do, it tells it, hey, I reproduce. That's what I'm on earth to do. I don't need to produce many flowers next year. So the first thing you do is after it's done blooming, cut off the spent flower. Do that everywhere you can on your lilac. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut some of this down. So every year after you cut the spent flowers, you can cut them down to a lower branch. So, and you just cut a whole bunch of them down to a lower branch, but make sure you leave some of the growth from last year. That's where you're going to get your flowers. And if you do that every spring, you can keep your lilac at whatever height you want. By the way, they sell dwarf lilacs, and I'm trying to remember the name, Tinkerbell. Tinkerbell is one that Megan and I showed on TV. She loves lilacs. She loved that lilac. We planted that, must have been 20 years ago on TV. And I think it's about 12 feet tall now. So they're very slow growing dwarfs. And they have very fragrant flowers. All right. I wanted to show you one last thing. See if I've got it. Oh, all right. Okay, and this will be, pardon me, this will be the last thing I'll show you, and then we'll do Q&A, and I'll give away some books. So, because I want to start with this. So this is lavender, and I love lavender. Even now, just smelling that fragrance is wonderful. And, you know, you want to trim off all the old stuff. Now, if the problem is you always end up getting these bare stems. And it's really hard to keep that from happening. So what can you do? First of all, if you could find a plant dwarf lavenders, they grow a lot slower and they don't form the bare stems as fast. The other thing is every spring, and the books tell you to do this in fall, but don't do it in fall, just neaten them up in fall. It'll be a beautiful evergreen plant out in your garden. But in spring, you want to shear your lavender to within a ½ inch above the bare stems. So just, it's going to look horrible. So there, you're going to prune it to a ½ inch above the bare stems right there. Now, it looks terrible now. This is right when you do it this time of year. It'll put out new growth right away. It'll bloom beautifully. and it'll really slow down the onset of these bare stems. So if you do it every year, now this has been in my garden for over 12 years, and that's all the bare stem there is. And some, I mean, they're like 3 feet tall, you know. So if you do it every year and cut it like that, your lavenders will stay beautiful, and it'll greatly, greatly slow the onset of these bare stems. Okay, this is going to be the first question that I want to, someone's going to have to answer. See, to win my book, you have to solve one of my tough stumper questions. So are we ready to ask a question here? Okay, here's the question. Because you only get, what you could do is you can hit the chat or whatever, or raise your hand if they've got that. And the first person that raises their hand that we notice gets a chance to try for the book, okay? So here's the first question. Who of you has ever had a wiener dog?
A wiener pot?
A wiener dog, yes. Anybody ever had a wiener dog?
Kathy Stone has.
All right, Kathy Stone, is it possible to put her up on the thing? Are you Kathy? Are you Kathy Stone?
Kathy Stone, you're on mute.
Now I'm not on mute. Yes, I have had a wiener dog.
Oh, good. See, I love wiener dogs, even though I've never had one, because they are totally fearless. No matter what, if you have a deer problem, send out the wiener dog. You got a bear that hangs out in your yard, you got bad neighbors, send out the wiener dog. It'll take care of everything. I only have one problem with wiener dogs. Uh-oh. Well, I only have one problem with wiener dogs, and that is that they're the only kind of dog that my dogs are afraid of. And that's because they ran into a nest of them by the park and they've never been the same. All right, you ready for your question?
I'm
All
ready.
right, here's your question. True or false? And you only get 2 tries on this. True or false? If you shear lavender like I recommend in spring, will you gain weight?
Look for it, Dave.
Oh. This is a trick question.
What do you guess?
No.
One more try. Good comeback.
Wait.
Yeah, think about it. When you shear it, it makes you start thinking about Provence. Next thing you know, you're in the house eating baguettes and pain chocolat. There's no control over that.
Yes, I should have known that would be a logical progression.
Well,
yeah.
you just won a copy of my new book. So
Yay!
they're going to send them to me. We got to make sure we get all of their addresses or emails so that I can make sure you get the book. And I'll sign something special for you in there.
Okay, now we have 4 books. We have Ciscoe's new book and Ciscoe's Ask Ciscoe book. So Kathy, which one do you pick?
Oh boy. Oh,
want
maybe the
First
new
book, or you want the second?
Let me try the newest one.
This one here.
Okay, oh la la.
Okay.
Sure. There we go.
Yeah, oh la la is the newest, and it's short stories about things I've learned in my long gardening career, and most of them are pretty funny. So I think you'll really enjoy it. I hope so. Ask Ciscoe, the other book, is question and answer, and it was the best-selling garden book in the United States for a while. So both of those are pretty good books. So, all right, congratulations, good job.
Now, Ciscoe, one message here is that we're at 3 o'clock. Now, you're willing to give away more books and answer questions. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So Ciscoe will stay on, but some of you have to leave at 3 because they said that they have to leave at 3. But just a little infomercial is that we're going to send out a evaluation form that just fill it out to make sure you get it back to us, to make sure we bring Ciscoe back again and give us your comments so we can do Zoom better and it'll ask you a few questions. It's not shared with anyone. It just stays in our own community at Aljoya, Mercer Island. So everyone will send it after this event is over. Please, it's important that you all fill out this evaluation form and go from there. So that's our, and then if you want to call us and do a tour, we can do a tour. We're doing tours right now in our lovely retirement community. So that's our commercial for that. Now back to Ciscoe.
Okay, all right. Second question.
We have 3 books left now.
Okay, 3 books left. Who loves Brussels sprouts?
Okay, we got Lisa McCardle.
Lisa, are you out there? If you can hit your, is it video? Is that
I'm
you,
out.
Lisa? All right. Okay. Well, see, eating Brussels sprouts is why you're so good looking. Here's your question. If you were a hummingbird, would you rather be a male or a female?
A female.
One more try.
Oh, a male.
You'd rather be a male hummingbird because male hummingbirds are the laziest bums on earth. They don't have to do anything. The female makes the little nest that's about the size of a half walnut. She even weaves spider web into it. She lays 2 eggs the size of little jelly beans. She's the one that sits on them to keep them warm, somehow manages to feed herself, protect those eggs from predators. Then when the babies hatch, guess who feeds them? Guess who protects them? Guess who teaches them to fly? During all this time, the male hummingbird has 2 jobs: protecting his territory and mating. My kind of job. So, all right. So does she get a choice on which book?
Yep. Lisa, you want Ciscoe?
I have this one.
Okay, so you want Oh La La.
Yes, please.
And
Great,
Ciscoe,
great.
Ciscoe, will you sign it?
I will. So yeah. So
Oh, I love
someone
this.
will work that out, and they'll get sent to me, and I'll mail them back to you guys. I just gotta make sure I get all of your addresses so that I can. But the folks at Aljoya will do that.
We'll take care of that. Now
Thank
we have 2 books left here.
Okay,
Ciscoe,
so
do
it's
you have another question for somebody?
yeah, for sure. Okay, so hummingbirds. There's 2 kinds of hummingbirds here. So we have the Anna's hummingbirds. They're the bigger green one right now. Their whole head is red and their courgette's red. And those hummingbirds stay here year round, the Anna's hummingbirds, and they're wonderful. The other hummingbird we have is the Rufus hummingbird. It's smaller. It just has an orange courgette, and but they're tough as nails. They chase everybody else out of the yard, including me now and then when they want to. So, oh, wait, I didn't ask the first question. I got to ask the other question first. Okay, who has ever eaten squirrel?
Oh,
Maybe nobody.
yeah.
Not too many takers on that one,
Okay,
Ciscoe.
who's got squirrels in their garden?
Oh, Molly Penny does.
All right, Molly Penny, we'll put you up on here. Hey, hi, Molly. Okay, here's your question. So the Rufus hummingbird flies all the way back to Mexico every fall, and it comes all the way back every spring. They fly about 2,500 miles. They can fly 500 miles in one day. Here's the question. When they get exhausted, is it true that they land on the back of geese and hitchhike? Oh, I can't keep a straight.
Oh, I have the Anna hummingbirds at my house.
Oh,
I
you got it. No
say-
way. I don't know.
I don't think they
People
would.
told me, oh, yeah, they hitchhike on geese. Stop.
I'm going to say false.
You're right.
Oh,
Okay,
Oh, yay.
just want a copy of Ask Ciscoe. I think you're gonna love that one.
thank you.
That's
Thank you.
I'll
so much.
sign it really cool for
I
you.
love your story about the restrooms in France.
Oh, thanks. Yeah,
But
and
that's in the other book.
I've run into other people that's happened to too, so.
You can't help
All
it.
right. Well, I have one more book I can give
Thank
away
you.
now.
Thank
All
you.
right, so here is the question. How many people, who has hummingbirds in their garden?
Have Julia Reed.
Oh, okay, is that you guys?
Unmute yourself, Julia
That's
Reed.
me. That's me. I do.
Okay, that's you. All right, Julia, all right.
Yes.
Okay, here's your question. Hummingbirds flap their wings. First of all, I should tell you, we're the luckiest people in the world because hummingbirds only live in North and South America and the Caribbean islands and some other islands. Nowhere else, no other continent on Earth has hummingbirds but us. We are so lucky. So I have friends in South Africa, in Asia, no hummingbirds. They come to visit. They're like, oh, these are the coolest birds I've ever seen. They're the only birds that can fly backwards and stand still in the air. They can even fly upside down. So they're amazing birds. Now, here's the question. Hummingbirds, when they're standing still in the air, can flap their wings 80 times per second to stand still in the air. However, when they feel a certain emotion, they can actually flap their wings 160 times per second. So here's your question. Is it when they're mad, when they're scared, or when they're in love?
I
This
would
is
say one of them.
in love, you got it. What a great guess. Yes. So this is, I only do this for rowdy crowds like you guys, but this, the hummingbird mating dance, and quite often you'll see this in your garden. So what you'll see is two female, I usually see the Anna hummingbirds do this. Two female hummingbirds will stand still in the air about 4 feet apart. Well, and at my house, it's Helen and Heloise. All of a sudden, Howie hummingbird comes shooting in between them, gives them both the eye, then from a dead stop, beats his little wings 160 times per second, shoots straight in the air like an arrow, hits speeds over 60 miles an hour, goes about 120 feet in the air, locks his wings into his side, and goes into a death-defying dive. Just is about to splat like a ripe tomato on the patio. He goes, misses the cement by 1/8 inch. What us guys have to do for love. So that's the hummingbird mating dance. So you won my book.
Thank you.
So
Yes.
I'll sign it for you and it'll get sent back to you.
Right here for Julia Reed.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I will-
Okay, well, if there's some questions, I'll do my best to answer them.
Okay, here you go. I have a lot of questions here, and so we'll just kind of go through those. One of
Okay.
them, the first one was Kathy. She was bold to send out the question was, you used bubble wrap earlier in the pot. Is that just for show today, or do you use it as insulation, or what is the deal with the bubble wrap you used?
The reason I had the bubble wrap was just so I could show without putting soil in the pot, just to hold the plants up. But I occasionally do use bubble wrap if I have a pot that's not that big and I have a plant that might die if we get freezing weather. So sometimes I'll put bubble wrap around the outside of the pot for the winter, and that might help keep it from freezing, because a lot of plants can survive the cold, but the roots freeze because they're in a pot up above the ground. That could kill the plant. So sometimes I use bubble wrap for that or other types of insulation.
Okay, great. Thank you. Now the next question is from Jody. And she asks, Ciscoe, I'm looking for an evergreen vine that likes sun and shade?
Well, I would, one that really works good, an evergreen vine that likes sun and shade and it blooms with fragrant flowers in spring is called akebia. And akebia, there's two kinds. There's one with 3 leaves and one with 5 leaves. And so it can take total shade and it can take full sun. And if you plant 2 kinds of akebia, so if you get one with 3 leaves, one with 5 leaves, and plant them nearby, they will cross-pollinate each other, and you'll get these great big long fruits that look like hot peppers hanging on your plant. They're really decorative. And then late in summer, they pop open, and the people in Japan where these grow, they just scoop out the stuff and eat them, and it tastes like a really delicious kind of dessert. It's really tasty. The only problem is there must be 12 billion seeds in those things. So I have fun. I chase my dogs and spit the seeds at them. But I learned a lesson though, and that is those seeds grow. I had that vine coming up everywhere. So you might want to pull those hot peppers off before they open up or the minute they do. But that akebia is a really good plant that I think would answer your question.
Man, I'm learning a lot today. Now we have a couple comments. One is 2 people like Fire Island. So good job using Fire Island.
Woohoo! All right.
So you hit the jackpot on that one. And then
Thank you.
you used 2 tools today. People would like the names of those 2 tools that you use. Can you tell us the names of those again, please?
Yes, I can. And I had forgotten. I wanted to tell you, you have to go online to get this one. So this cut and hold pruner is from the, let's see, it says it on here, the Wildflower Seed Company. So if you just do a search, Wildflower Seed Company, cut and hold pruner, it'll come right up. And they sell ones that are longer, but this is the short one, the short reach. But the longer ones are really good too, and I use them to prune all kinds of things in my garden. They're high quality, and I think they're worth the money, and they're light. So this is good. This is Felco, so Felco, Felco number 8 if you're right-handed, number 9 if you're lefty. These are going to cost, both of these are going to be kind of expensive. I don't remember what I paid for this guy. I've had it so long, but and I haven't bought one. I was a professional pruner for years. I only had 1 pair of Felcos for like 30 years, and one time I dropped them on cement and I broke the blade, but I just bought a replacement blade and put it on and it worked. So they're practically indestructible. The only time I ever had to replace a Felco pruner was I was pruning in this really grouchy woman's garden. And I finally got done. All day she was following me around in the garden saying, why won't you cut more off that? And why did you cut that? You know, and it was like, she just was not easy to please. So at the end of the day, I go to get in my truck, so happy to be getting out of there. And I look in my holster and my pruners are gone. Somehow I dropped them out in her garden. I hunted for 2 hours with her walking around with me the whole time, telling me, why did you prune that one that way? So that was the only time I ever had to replace these. Number 8 for righty, number 9 for lefties, and they sell them at almost all the good nurseries. So if you go to your favorite nursery, I bet they'll have these. Boy, they're nice. I'll tell you. And I put a little WD-40 on them now and then. That keeps them working really good. So, and do get yourself a holster. And they usually sell those right by the pruner. You will be so happy. And these, you don't have to put them on a belt. They just hook right onto your pocket. So it's really good. I love them. So, and get yourself a sharpener too when you do it. They should sell those right there.
How we doing? You got time for a few more questions?
Sure.
Okay, this is a more sensitive one, Cisco. I hope you can be sensitive about this one. What is your solution for moles?
Well, it's illegal to trap moles in Washington State. We actually passed a law that you can't trap moles. WSU did a big study and they said the only way you can get rid of moles is to trap them. But I have, and people have all these home remedies. Some people go to the barber and collect all this hair and put hair down all the mole holes. And they say that the hair gets between their little fingers on their claws and it drives them nuts. But I think it might drive your dog nuts if that got there. And who wants to go to the barber and come home with a big bag of hair and scatter it all over your garden? So there's all these methods people use. Another one is crushed garlic. So you can buy crushed garlic in bottles. And I tried it and I put a little down every mole hole. And at first the moles were gone, but they came back really quick. I think that's the Italian kind of mole. So, so what do? This is in my book, Ask Ciscoe, and it's also on my website, Ciscoe, CISCOE.com. So you can go to that if you forget this recipe. This works better than any other method I know. And it doesn't hurt the moles or anything. So what you do is you take 2 handfuls of mint stems and leaves. They should be pliable stems. Don't grow mint in your garden. It'll take over your garden. I grow it in a pot so that I have this for this. And I take 2 handfuls of mint stems and leaves, put them in the blender, put enough water to make a slurry and just blend it up. Then I put that in a big soup pan, half full of water, get it to a boil. And the minute it boils, I turn it to simmer and let it simmer for 30 minutes. Your house will smell so wonderful. You won't believe it. Then you could take what's in that pan and dilute it to make 6 gallons of what I call mole blasters. So if you've got some old 1-gallon bottles that you used for distilled water or something, don't throw those away. Keep them. Put an equal amount in each of 6 of those, fill them full of water, shake them up. Now you've got mole blasters, I call it. You take that, put it in your watering can, keep it straight, don't dilute it from that point, and just pour it right in the mole hole, right in the area the moles are working. Moles hate mint with a passion. Almost always, they pack up their bags and move to your next door neighbor's gardens. But persistence is the key. They tend to come back after a while. The mint doesn't last that long. So you want to be ready. You see that next molehill, you do it again. And here's a little trick about moles. And everybody hates those little mounds they make and they look horrible and they wreck the lawn and everything. Don't stomp them down. If you do, they just push them back up. So instead, just rake them out. Just rake the dirt out into the lawn. It'll be good for it. And they won't make any of those new mounds anymore. So you might still have some moles working away down there, but you won't even know it. And they don't harm plants. They only eat worms and things like that. But they still could be a problem because if they're making a run right near the surface, then you could trip in that or something. So they're not good to have around. That mint mole blaster works good.
Okay, good. So I'm sure your neighbors love you too.
Yeah.
Now, this is another question. How do you keep basil plants from bolting?
Okay, with basil, the trick is how much you water and when you plant. I love basil with a passion. I eat it on everything, So the first way to murder basil is to plant it when it's too cold out. They always start sounding at the nursery, but it's too cold. If it gets into the 40s at night, it's going to kill all your basil. And I have had to replace basil so many times, I can't tell you, because I want to get it going. And you can grow it from seed, but the soil temperatures have to be up there around 60 degrees to do it. So, but you could do it inside and then bring it out. But I usually just buy starts. Make sure you keep it well watered. So you don't want to drown it, but if it gets dried out, it thinks it's going to die. Any plant that thinks it's going to die thinks I'm on earth to reproduce. I got to quick put up flowers so I get seeds so that I leave a couple of plants behind to remember me when I'm gone, you know? So make sure that you keep it well watered. I don't fertilize basil very much, but I keep it well watered. And when it does try and flower, I pinch off. So the thing is, you should be harvesting your basil. Like, you know, I always harvest basil in the morning when there's still little dew on the plant. And that's when there's the most oil in there. And so every morning, pinch the top off. That'll keep them from growing those flowers. You don't want that because they lose all their flavor once they do.
Great. And the next question, this was sent in by Grace. And thank you, Ciscoe, for answering all these questions and going over. You're a super trooper for doing that. But everyone has these great questions for you. The next one is, Grace has a pot and it has the same bushes that you were talking about and has creeping Jenny growing in it. Is it okay to throw annuals in the pot? Will it disturb the roots?
No, I think it's okay. You know, a lot of times in my pots, I use something, I often use something like this for a centerpiece, and it's wonderful. Now, the roots will go all through the pot. So in the spring, when I'm going to put in a new display of plants, and at some point, if this gets too big and the whole thing fills with roots, you're going to have to take that out and start over with a new centerpiece. But until that happens for a couple of years, next spring, so I'll do it this year, the following spring, I'll pull out all those plants that have died in there, you know, because, you know, so many of the annuals just die and we leave them in there till next spring a lot. When I do that, I will fill in with compost and mix that into the soil. And that really improves the soil. And then, go ahead and plant all your plants, and your creepy Jenny will still be alive in there. You're not going to hurt that no matter what you do. Don't worry. And you'll get another really great year out of your container. I guarantee it.
Okay, good. Now this is from Lisa, and Lisa was one of our winners. So this is a question from her on Hiroshira. Did I say it right?
The which one?
Hiroshira? Heuchera?
Heuchera.
Heuchera. Okay, heuchera. That's it.
Oh, heuchera. Okay. On the heuchera stem that you cut off and will stick in the soil, do you trim off the old branches on it when you put it in the soil?
Yes. So, okay. The question was, should you pull off the old leaves and everything, pull that all off? And I have to confess, I used to throw these right into the clean green, the yard waste. And then one time I saw my wife Mary doing this, cutting off these, and she started putting them in the ground. And lo and behold, they all grew. And I learned from her to do this. So it works really well. Pull off all the old leaves and then it's better to use kind of a shady spot. If you put this in the ground in the sun, it might cook because it doesn't have any roots. It takes time for it to grow new roots on this. So in a shady spot and keep it moist, and they'll start to grow in no time. You got yourself a brand new, beautiful heuchera, and they're not that cheap to buy. So it's a great way to reproduce them.
No, I meant all of those big, long stems around it.
Oh, no, don't cut those off yet.
Okay,
That's a great question. No, leave these on, just put it down into the ground right up to there,
Okay.
to the leaves. And
Okay.
then if these will start looking horrible in a while, then you can cut them off, and by then this new center will have grown up and you can get rid of the old ones. Great question.
Now, here's the one about, to help with the dogs here. So using bulb food and other fertilizers, this is from Kay Cook. What's safe for dogs if you use bulb food and for other fertilizers?
That's a really good question. You know, I've had dogs eat a little fertilizer before. And when they've done that, I called the vet and they said, generally, if it's only a teensy bit, it's not a problem. So if you use like a good organic fertilizer, and some of them say right on there, safe for pets. Okay, still work it into the ground with something. That way the chance of Fido getting to it is a lot less. And here's a big warning. A lot of people use bone meal, you know, and so like around their roses, they plant bone meal or put it under their tomato. Well, if the dog could get at that, BONE. That is what the dog wants. It is not good for the dog to eat that bone meal, and they'll dig your tomato. You'll see it fly in the air. So don't even bother using bone meal if it's anywhere your dog can get at it. Even with slug bait, there's a slug bait called Sluggo, and it's the safest kind for pets there is. And if they eat a little bit, it's not going to hurt them. But if they ate a ton of Sluggo, it would be really bad for them. And there are dogs that have gotten into the bag and eaten a whole bunch of Sluggo. So generally in my garden, I have most of the areas where I like my vegetable garden and things like that fenced off so my dogs can't get in there. And then I feel safer using these because even organic pesticides, even if it says safe for pets and everything, I still work them in and I try to make sure that my little Izzy and Leo can't get in there and get in trouble. So you want to be careful with that.
Okay, very good. And then I think we have many more questions, but we're just gonna we can't get them all because we're already a half hour over, but we're gonna ask you one more question about lilacs. Can you prune them now? Is it okay?
I would not prune lilacs now because you're just going to be cutting off the flowers you would have got in a little bit. It's too early now. So wait until after it blooms. It isn't going to hurt to wait that long. And then once it's bloomed, that's when you want to do your pruning. And that's actually a better time because lilacs are going to put out new growth right after you prune. So, and those will set blooms for next year. So it's kind of like same as when you prune a rhododendron. You want to do it as soon after the flowers fade as you can. And then while you're doing that, you cut off all those old seed pods and that'll tell it, hey, I got to bloom more next year. I didn't reproduce this year, you know. So that'll help a lot. And you can really keep your lilac low if you do that.
Very good. Now we have so many more questions, but unfortunately we can't get to them. But we thank you, Ciscoe. But one more thing is we're going to go off script just for a minute. And you're not going to believe it, but we have one more book here.
Oh, great.
So this winner is going to be for the people that have stayed half hour over, 32 minutes over to be with you. We want to have a lucky winner get a book. And do you have another question in your pot?
Yeah. Now, before I do that, I do want to let people know I have a new radio show. Many of you know that I was on Cairo for over 30 years, but at some point it became cheaper for them. They made more money putting an infomercial on than I could make doing the show. So that was the end of that, but it was 30 great years. But now I'm on a nonprofit radio station in Sequim called KSQM. And so you can stream it on your computer at 9 o'clock on Saturday morning. And there is a way that you can get podcasts too. I can't remember how to do it, but you can find out if you go to their station. So KSQM on Saturday morning at 9. It's a lot of fun. So, all right, let's give away that last book now. Okay, so who has ever had a Mini Cooper? No Mini Coopers?
No, you can't haul a lot of plants in those systems.
No.
It's like a pickup truck or something.
I've had them sticking out the sunroof before. Okay, who's ever had a motorcycle?
Oh, there, we have Tamara. Tamara Inman.
All right, thank you. Okay, as soon as she pops up,
Yep. Tamara, take yourself off mute, please. There you go.
This is
Oh,
my
great.
first time. This is my first time on Zoom, so I'm
oh,
learning.
you're doing great. You're doing great. Well, welcome. Okay, I got a tough question for you. Are you ready for this?
Oh, I guess.
Okay. Do hummingbirds eat bugs? You only get 2 tries on this one.
No.
One more
Yes.
try.
Okay, yes.
Yes, good comeback. Very good. Yeah, and here's something really cool to watch. If you have a spider web out in your garden, watch and see if a hummingbird hovers right in front of the spider web. So what it's doing, it's hoping that a bug will get caught in the spider web. Then it
Oh.
zooms in and grabs it before the spider could do anything about it. See, because hummingbirds feed their young almost exclusively bugs because they're way higher in protein than nectar is. But interestingly, if the hummingbird grabs the bug and the spider gets huffy about it, the spider gets fed to the kids too. So,
Oh,
so,
yeah.
hey, good job. You won a book. Good. I'll sign that for you for sure, and then we'll send them back to you. So, and thanks a lot
Fantastic.
for coming to my talk today.
Well,
Fantastic.
we thank everyone for jumping on, with all the times that are going on and everything's going on. It's nice to take an hour and a half out of our day and laugh with you and spend time in the outdoors. And we just loved it today. We just love being all of us together today with you, Ciscoe. And
It
yes,
was very fun. Thank you very
I
much.
got more
Well,
comments.
thank you.
very
I
much.
really
It was very
fun too.
informative. Thank you. So we'll all thank you very much. And then don't forget to do your feedback forms, and send them. We're going to send them out shortly because we want Ciscoe back again next year, and we want you all back again. So everybody have a wonderful day, and thank you for joining Aljoya Mercer Island for this great event today.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Don't
you.
forget these Brussels sprouts.
Brussels sprouts.
Bye-bye.
Okay.